And welcome back to the shop. In this video I will be cleaning and lubing the linkage on my bike here. I'm also going to discuss when is a good time to clean and lube your linkage, as well as how many hours, and should you do it when it's brand new or not. Back in the day, it was real important when you bring home a new bike to lube up everything on the bike. Take it apart, clean everything, lube everything. From the factory, they were known to kind of skimp on the grease, but things are a little bit different nowadays. I know people still suggest bringing a brand new bike home and lubing everything because, hey, they might have missed the bearing, right? They might have just not put enough grease on one of the bearings. But I'm paid by people quite often to work on new bikes to do this, to take it all apart and grease everything. And I'm finding amongst all your brands, for the most part, everything's looking well lubed nowadays. It doesn't seem to be an issue anymore. And I tell my customer, you know, we really don't have to do that, right? You know this, right? And I explain it to them, but sometimes it just makes them feel better, so I do it for them anyway. But on my own personal bikes, I have to be honest with you, I don't. I wait until I get to about 100 hours on the bike. Because here's my logic. Since I'm finding that pretty much every bike comes well lubed, and even if it's only just a little bit of lube, it's enough. These bearings don't have to be swimming in grease. They just need to be wet. Trust me, adding more grease is not going to all of a sudden make them freer feeling. It doesn't happen. Matter of fact, in the skateboard world, people are looking for the most speed out of their skateboards. It's a common known knowledge not to over oil your bearings, to just lightly oil them, and the skateboard will actually go faster. So by loading these things up, slamming them packed full of grease, it's not like your suspension is magically going to become smoother. I know some people say that, but I haven't seen it myself. Anyway, from the factory, there is enough grease in these bikes that I'm finding. So when I get a brand new bike or a very young bike, I don't worry about lubing the linkage until I get to 100 hours. I do it every 100 hours. As long as you're not using a pressure washer heavy around your linkage and your swing arm bearings, you're not going to push water in them. That's the real killer of your bearings, is when water gets in there. As long as no water's getting in there, they'll make it to 100 hours, no problem. The wife's bike here is about 325 hours on it now. Haven't had to replace a single bearing on it yet, except for the lower shock bearing. Now that I do expect to be a maintenance item when it comes to the bearings on the linkage and the swing arm. The lower shock bearing, this one right here, gets dragged. It's a small bearing, first off, the smallest bearing in the whole linkage system and the suspension system back here, but it also is the one that gets dragged to the dirt when you're bottoming out your bike in the dirt, or when the suspension fully compresses. This is the one that gets all the hell. So this is a wear item, and I usually will replace them when I service the shock if it needs to be done. If I find that it has a little bit of play, or it's just for whatever, just starting to look a little nasty. But otherwise, everything else, all the other bearings in this bike, I can get them to last for as long as the bike is in my hands. Again, 325 hours, haven't had to replace anything but a lower shock bearing. So when I bring home a brand new bike or a very low hour bike, I don't worry about greasing anything on the linkage or the swing arm. Here's what I tell myself. If for some reason from the factory someone just completely forgot one bearing, if they forgot to grease one bearing and that one bearing goes bad, well, I'll know pretty soon, because that bearing's going to go bad. It's going to get play. The amount of time that I have saved in the past 15 years by not greasing every bike that I have brought home, the amount of time I saved, if I run into one bike that I have to replace a bearing on because I didn't check it when it was brand new, it was totally worth it, in my opinion. I've saved a lot of time, because this can be pretty time consuming to do all this. So my suggestion to you, and okay, I know there's going to be someone in the forum, I brought my bike home brand new, I found all the bearings dry or one bearing. I'm just not seeing it myself. That's all I'm saying. Maybe you've had that luck. I haven't, and I probably do about one bike a month. Been doing about one bike a month for years now, and I'm just not seeing it. They come with enough lube. Yeah, they might not be swimming in grease, but they have enough grease, and all the bearings have to be it just has to be clean, and they have to be wet, and they're going to be good. So in today's servicing, what I'm going to be doing is just the linkage bearings. I'm not worried about the swing arm bearings right in here. I'm just worried about the linkage. I honestly don't worry about the swing arm bearings till about 200 hours, and then I'll clean them. The reason being is because the bearings that are least likely to fail is going to be, first off, this bearing right up in here, and then second off, the bearing that's right up in here. If any bearing is going to fail, going to become to the point that it has play or whatever, it's going to be obviously this one right here, which is a service item, but it's going to be this one right here that gets dragged in dirt, and maybe the one just above it. I hardly ever see the one back here that connects to the frame. Up in here, I hardly ever see that one fail, and I hardly ever see swing arm bearings fail unless water has gotten in them from someone getting a pressure washer up in here and just trying to get all the dirt out with a pressure washer. You got to be careful with the pressure washers. Keep your distance. You don't want to push the water through the seals. But as long as there's grease in there, your bearings are going to last. Just keep the water out. So a quick recap before I get down and dirty here. The lower shock bearing, this is a service item. I would clean and grease that every time you service your shock. And if you have to replace it, replace it. The rest of these bearings right here on the linkage, every 100 hours I take them apart and I clean them. At about the 200-hour mark, when I go to take them apart and clean them, I might put new seals on them, because at that point maybe the seals are getting a little bit older, but the bearings will still be good. Again, 325 hours. The bearings will still be good, but the seals might be getting a little older, and again, you don't need water getting in there. And then at the 200-hour mark, that's when I'll worry about the swing arm bearings, because by 200 hours, I'm probably pulling this motor out at some point at 200 hours if it's a 4-stroke, or before 200 hours for whatever reason on a 2-stroke. Maybe I wore out a crank or whatever. While I have the motor out, I might as well get to the swing arm bearings just real quick and easy. Now, I will say, if I have to pull the motor out, let's say I had to pull this motor out, a good example, my YZ250 2-stroke. I pulled the motor out at 135 hours to put a new crank in. While I had the motor out, even though I didn't clean these bearings, I just slid the motor's out, I slid the inner race of the bearing out the middle here. You can just slide them out and you'll see the needle bearings in there. I just shoved a little bit more grease in there. That doesn't hurt, you know. So if you have the motor out earlier than 200 hours, it doesn't hurt to just shove a little bit of grease back up in there before you put it back together. But otherwise, I don't worry about cleaning them and then re-greasing them until about 200-hour mark. So let's go ahead and get this thing apart. Obviously, it's going to be a little different in every different type of bike out there, but it's relatively the same as well. On most bikes, it is easier just to go ahead and remove this lower chain roller here, because that's going to give us better access to that nut for the linkage there that connects to the frame. I'll come over to this side, get the lower shock off. And you know the routine is in all my videos, I always say you'll see me using an impact a lot on teardown, but I'm cautious where I use it on reassembly because you can strip stuff out in a hurry. Alright, if you don't already know this, if you lift up on the rear wheel a little bit, then it kind of takes the friction off, takes the pressure off the bolt, so you can slide the bolt out. There you go. Alright. Alright, we'll remove this one. Huh, that one didn't seem like it was on that tight, was it? Oh, that's okay. Let's slide that out. Alright, get that one out of there. And all this fell out. Okay, now we have to get that off. Actually, I could have left that on and removed this all as a unit. That's okay. On these Yamahas, some of them, mainly the 2-stroke, have these little rubber things you have to pull out to get to the bolt in there. And let's pull this one on out. Well, that one I know I had pretty tight. A little tip for you guys with the bolts that go through the swing arm on these Yamahas, ones that actually go through with the rubber cap. The factory torque specs will sometimes leave this with able to move around a little bit. It'll cause you to feel a little bit of play as you lift the rear wheel up and down while the bike's on the stand. A lot of times they need more torque than what the factory recommends and how they come brand new from the factory. When your bike's brand new, it might feel nice and tight, maybe around 50 hours or so, or maybe 100 hours, you'll start finding that play build. If you just tighten that up a little bit higher than the factory torque specs, it'll crunch it down and get rid of that for you. And that's why that bolt was kind of a little bit tight. All right, let's go to the other side here and move the rubber cap on this side. I can either punch that out the rest of the way to the other side, or I can use a magnet. Oh, there goes the nuts to the bike. They just fell on the floor. And then for this one right here, you have to actually use a wrench to get on it. At least on this bike. Some bikes this won't be in the way. On this bike it is in the way. Yep. I'm gonna have to put some muscle on it. Oh. Jeez, it's on there. Let me try double wrenching this thing. Yeah, there we go. Wasn't so bad once I doubled up the wrenches. That's how it goes sometimes. Yeah, that thing's lodged in there. Looks like I'm gonna have to tap this one through. Get it just. Once you get it freed up, they usually will slide right on out. There it is. Even that's kind of stuck. There we go. Okay, now I personally like to always pay attention to how this was on the bike originally, which side was the left and the right, so we can see that the nut was on this side, and this side has a spot that holds the bolt, so we know, remember that was on the left side. So I like to keep track of that and put it back on, because obviously you could probably put it the other way and work just fine, but I like to keep things the way they were originally. Okay, I'm going to start with this one. What I like to do is before I slide this out, I like to clean the external. I have this jug right here. It's full of gasoline, but you can use anything, parts cleaner, you name it. And let me get a brush to clean it. I'm just going to use a toothbrush here. I just want to clean the external now while it's apart. I mean, while it's together. But you can go ahead and take the bearings out first and then clean it. It's up to you. Either way is fine. This is just how I do it. In here getting high off gasoline. Alright. And now I'll go and do the same thing to this knuckle right here. Alright, let me get this cleaned up and I'll be right back. I also like to give all the hardware a dip. Just get that stuff cleaned up as well while we're at it. Okay, back to this one. Just gonna slide this right on out of there. We're gonna have a bunch of needle bearings in there. Now you have two types of bikes out there. You have some that the needle bearings are, you're able to pull them out, and there's some that they're just kind of they have like a little tab on the end of each of the needle bearings that kind of lock them in the sleeve. I find them that get locked into the outer race or the sleeve of the bearing, whatever you want to call that. I find that to be more common on the Kawasaki's, and these Yamahas, I find that I can usually get these out. I'm just going to use a little magnet here. And let's see, you can, by the way, I don't know if you can see in there, they are not dry. See if I can get the light in there better for you guys. These are not dry. Let me get better light. Alright. Look at that. You can see there is grease. Yeah, it's not like, you know, slam packed full of grease. It's only on the bearings itself, but they've been wet. And there's been no play in this rear end. And that's really all it needs. Now, obviously, when I put it together, I'm going to slam it packed full, because that's what we do, right? If a little is good, a lot is better. That's how we think as humans. But from the factory, the little bit of grease they put on the bearings, it holds up. It does well. So anyway, where's my magnet again? Oh, yep, these come out. You will find at 100 hours, like this bike, I actually went past due. I have to be honest. This bike currently has about 120 something hours on it. I've been busy doing other things, but I try to get to them at 100 hours. You can see the grease is dark now. It's old, and so that's what we're doing here. We're just going to pull them out, clean them, and re-grease them. The seals are good. I'm not finding them rusty or anything, so no water's gotten in here. So I don't have to worry about I won't have to worry about, there we go. I won't have to worry about replacing any seals this time. when I do this again at 200 hours, then I'll replace the seals, just because the bearings is honestly, as long as you have grease on these bearings and no water gets in there, they really don't wear out. They will just keep going and going and going. Now the seals do wear out after a while, so I do suggest replacing them at about 200 hours if you're going to continue running that bike and you want to run the same bearings. Just clean grease them and put some new seals, because what we really have to do is keep all the water out. Okay, got them out. I'm going to take all this. I got a little cup here with some gasoline. I'm just going to drop all of them in there. We'll worry about that in a couple minutes. You don't want to lose any of these. And again, on the bikes that these have like a little skinny tab on the end of each one that locks them into the outer race of the bearing, and you'll tell, you won't be able to get them out. You'll stick a little magnet in there or a small screwdriver and try to pull them out, and they won't come out. If you have that type, you just have to leave the bearings in there, dip this whole thing in gasoline or whatever cleaner you're using, and roll the bearings around like this, and just to clean them out, and then maybe blow it out and do it again. You just have to clean them while they're in there and lube it and put it back together. But if you can get them out like this, then go ahead and pull them out. That's what I do. Okay, now I'm just going to dip this thing back in here. Take my toothbrush. And I'm going to clean all that old grease right on out of there. Yeah, give it a little bit more. There we go. It's good and clean in there now. Let me clean the external of it again. I got some fingerprints on it. Alright, let me go blow this out to get it nice and dry, and I'll be right back. Okay. Cap that off. Set this aside for now. Remember all the bearings I have in here? Just gonna swirl it around in the gasoline. There we go. That one just jumped out of there like a fish. Make sure I got them all. Yeah. Alright. Let me dry these off on here. Don't want to lose any of these. Okay, for this part, I kind of have to take off the gloves. This is the nasty, greasy part, but with gloves on, it just makes it difficult. I'm going to be using this Maxima grease right here. The grease, not only do we need grease on them, but it also helps hold the bearings in place for us. So I'm going to put grease all the way around the race that the bearing rides in. Just put a layer all the way around, and that's going to allow us to just stick the bearings right onto that grease, and that the grease will hold it on there for us. Ugh, messy. Alright. And now I get to put 1, 2, 3 at a time. You start stacking the bearings in here. Now, you know, for this one, there's 2 sets of bearings, one right here, one right there. So I just, because I'm doing both of them at the same time. I usually just try to fill up this side so I can't fit any more needles in it. And then I go to the other side, and that's I'll typically find the exact amount on that side, unless I lost one, which I hope I didn't. I don't think I did. But you saw how that one jumped out of the gasoline like a fish jumping out of water. They can sometimes disappear on you. Of course, if one disappeared on me, I do have, like, anytime I'm maintaining someone else's bike, and let's say they have me put all new bearings in, the bearings that are still good, I just keep a lot of junk. That's what I'm trying to say. I keep a lot of junk, and I can go dig through them bearings that were still good that they had me replace because they just bought like a all balls kit or whatever, and I'll keep the ones that were good for times like this, where if one of these needles hopped out, I'll go dig through there, find a needle the exact size, and replace it if I can't find one for whatever reason. We're almost there. Let me get a flathead. Take a flathead and try to split them. Oh yeah, I still got room for more. Well, wait, that one popped up over here. Let's see. I might have room for one more. I think that's it. Let's see what we got for the other side. Let's cram these in here. I hope all you guys got a good weekend of riding in. Last weekend we went out to MX-74. That was a good weekend of riding. Hot. It's summertime, getting to be summertime here in Florida, and it definitely feels like it. But it was still a good day. I just have to get acclimated to the heat again. This weekend we're going to be going out to Dade City Motocross on Sunday, the extended track. I'm going to be taking this bike right here, the YZ125, out for that one. Almost there. I'm doing this one all on video. The other one right there, I'll cut through a lot of this to save you time. I just want to do at least one complete set on film here for you guys that have never done this before. Show you how it kind of goes. Okay, we got one more needle bearing. Let's see if we can get it in here. It looks like we're going to be able to. Oh, wait, oh. One jumped out. If you keep putting one in and you find one jumps out as you put one in, maybe that one needs to go on the other side. Maybe there is room on the other side for another one. It looks like there was. So you see how that worked? I thought I had enough in this side, but when I went to go put them all in over here, I got to the last one. Every time I'd push it in, one up top would pop out. I tried again and pop out. So then I tried over here, and I was able to get it in over here. So we got them all in over here. We got them all in over there. I could just button this up right now, and honestly, that is enough grease. But I'm just going to put a little bit more, make a mess out of it here. Be careful as you're putting more grease in that you don't grab the needles and pull them back out. The grease can act like a suction cup. Now if you got all the needles in the seat properly, we should be able to just slide this thing right on in. Let's see. As you slide on, make sure it didn't push a needle out on this side. It's looking good. Alright. And wipe my hands up here. This is pretty nasty. A little rag. And this one's done. Make sure it spins. Yes, it does. We are good. Alright, time to move on to the next one here. Set this one aside. It is complete, ready to go. Now we got to get the balls of the bike. These are the nuts. Alright, now this one on this bike, every bike's different, right? So you saw this was just a sleeve that came through. And if you're working on KTM or a Honda, you're going to want to pay attention. Is it just a sleeve like that was, or does it have caps? I can look in here and I can see that mark right there. This has a cap. So I want to pop that cap off. See what I'm saying? Again, every bike's going to be a little bit different. You know, if you're working on a now that I get this side off, I can just push it, and it pushes the other side out and off. Now these bearings already started popping out, but that before I pushed them back in there. But before I go any further, let me show you this. You can see these were well greased. Again, 120 hours. They're wet. That's all I need to be. They've done their job. Oh, we dropped one needle. See how easy it is to lose these things? Okay, I'm gonna leave that right there. I'm gonna pop this side out because what I'm checking for here is, do I need to do just this first and then this, because these needles might be a different length, a different width, or are all four of these in here, these four roller, are they all the same? Usually they are, but I just want to check before I try to do them all at one time. Look at that. Look at all that nice. Great. Well, I'm going to clean it anyway, but you can see that this was well greased. Same with this one right here. They have grease on them. Based on what I'm seeing here, these look the same. These are even the same width. Or are they? Yeah, they're the same width, so we're good. So I can mix these up any way I like. Alright, where's my magnet? Let me set all these aside so I don't get anything mixed up. We already have one needle that fell out. By the way, I swapped out that gasoline for some fresh new stuff. Magnets are always your friend when you're working on these dirt bikes. You gotta have a lot of different type magnets floating around. They make the jobs much easier. Oh, got some up there. Okay. As you can see that little washer in there spinning? They have these little sleeves in there because when this is pressed in, kind of helps relieve some of the friction. Not going to worry about pulling the seals out and pulling them sleeves out when we clean them. We're just going to clean it with a toothbrush really good. It'll get all that cleaned out, and then when we grease it, we'll just make sure we cram grease back up in there. But as you can see, I could have totally probably taken this bike to 200 hours and without doing this job. It would have made it. But it does give me peace of mind to do it at every 100 hours. I don't waste my time doing it when it's brand new because, well, I typically find them pretty well greased. And if they missed one, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I'll find out pretty fast. And the amount of time I've saved in my life by not greasing every brand new bike will make up for the amount of time that I'm going to waste replacing that one bearing that finally wasn't greased. It's whenever I run into that, and I haven't run into it yet. Alright, before I clean this up, I want to look in here real good. Make sure I didn't miss one needle, because if you lose that one needle, well, you'll be looking for a needle. Okay, time to clean that. Same thing, I'm just going to put it in the gasoline here. And with a toothbrush and work it around. Remember, this one has sleeves in it, so if whatever linkage you're working on has sleeves, make sure you work, and you're not going to pull the seals out and replace the seals like I'm not doing here. Just make sure you work around them sleeves real good with the toothbrush. Try to get them bristles all up in there and get all that cleaned out. Let me get this one cleaned up and I'll be right back. Okay, I got all that cleaned up. I have grease up in there. Let me lay down a fresh rag right here for these, because I've worked in this area for a little bit now, and I'm sure some grits and grains have dropped on it. Same thing with these. Swoosh them all around. Alright, let me pull these out and we'll start putting them back in. Okay, same thing as last time. I'm just going to fill it up. Fill them all up. And if we have any that pop out of their seat, then we know that it's supposed to go in one of the other bearings. So I'm going to work on this for a minute and I'll be right back. Okay, got them all in their seat. They're all greased up well. I'll just put a little more on top for good measure. Why not, right? And we can slide it together. Now, because we didn't remove the seals and because this one does have sleeves, it is important to get grease in between the seal and the bearing up in the sleeve area, or the washer sleeve, whatever the heck that is in there, whatever you want to call that thing. Okay, I think I can slide these in now. Check, make sure it didn't push no needles out. No, it didn't. Okay, I'm sliding the other one. Boy, what a mess. Didn't push no needles out. Okay, slide these on. All right. There we go. Alright, let me wipe the grease off this. Now what I do is any of the grease that hung over, it's inside this hole, I just take my toothbrush I use to clean everything and just kind of run it up through here. Just make sure we get all the grease in there. That's just going to make it where next time we have to remove these bolts, so they'll come out a little bit easier. Then I'll also take these, all the bolts, give them a nice little coating of rust. You see that rust right there that can build up? Put a little bit of lube on it, and that way it's easier to slide it out next time. Okay, time to slide everything together. Remember, this had that piece on the left side of the bike. Oh, by the way, I did go ahead and take a rag and wiped off this surface right here on the lower shock and all the areas that the bearings bolt down to, so there's no grit in between the linkage bearings and the frame or the swing arm. Oh, great. Let me actually, this one slides in for the other side. That's right. That's bolt. Let me start feeding that over here. Here we go. Let me go to the other side and feed that through. Okay, got that one slid through. Go ahead and put the washer on it. And the nut. Now I'm not going to tighten these nuts up yet. I want to get the bike on the ground, compress the suspension a few times by jumping up and down on it, and then tighten it up while it's sitting on its own weight on the wheels, because there is play in all this stuff. You know, there's just a little bit of play, and you want it to be on the compressed end of that play when you tighten it up. Of course, after you get on the track, if you don't do this, after a few jumps, I'm sure it will eventually slide down. Doing it this way keeps you from having a funny feeling bike until you hit a few jumps and get it settled into its position. Okay, that flat side, oh, let me get the camera on it. Okay, on these Yamahas, that flat side right there matches that flat side right there as you slide up. I'm just going to use this big magnet here. Oh, yeah, gotta get this in there. Can't forget that. Let me get that lined up. Okay, I'm just going to look down the hole here and line it up, and then try to slide this on in. There we go. Alright. I'll put that nut in and the washer on the other side in a second. And then let me go ahead and finish up with this here. I'll worry about that in a second too. I'll get the swing arm after I get this one on. I mean, I'll get the lower shock. Alright, same thing here, just kind of line it up by eye first. And try to push it on through. You got a flat spot here, match up a flat spot there. Okay, lower shock bearing. Looks like it actually lines up. Sometimes you got to lift up the rear wheel a little bit depending on how tall your stand is to get it to line up. But this one looks like it's pretty. Now I'm going to have to lift it up just a little bit. Let's see. Oh, no, actually I had to lift up the rear of the bike just a hair. But whatever case, got that in there. Alright, all this is good. Got this nut on this side, so let's go to the other side now. Okay, on the other side, let me finger tight this on here. go. Washer there. Okay, got that nut and washer there. This one is in the hole. Just gonna use a normal socket with a long extension, but I need to get the washer on there first. It's deep up in that hole. A magnet. You gotta kind of play with it a little bit. Here, let's see. Maybe I can hold it in there with that and pull. Yeah. Come on. Ha, there we go. All right. Got to stay on there. There we go. Okay, take it off the stand, bounce on it a few times. Here. There we go. It really doesn't matter which one you start with, but just keep the bike off the stand. It might look like it's on the stand, but it is not. I still have it sitting on that triangle after jumping up and down on it. Oh, gotta do this one. There are torque specs for this, but I do it by hand. There we go. I know what I'm looking for. I've been doing this for a lot of years, and I kind of know about where I want it. But if you're unfamiliar, you don't have experience in this, in the manual, your manual, there will be torque specs for all this stuff, and you can just follow the torque specs, except like I mentioned earlier in the video on these Yamahas with the bolt that goes to the frame here, you might have to put a little bit higher than the torque spec to get a good tight fit. But you do want these pretty tight. If you do them like hand, like I'm doing, these big ones you want them tight. Be careful with that one, the lower shock one. You can strip that one out, but all the other ones you definitely want them pretty good and tight. Put this one a little bit tighter because, like I mentioned, if I end up stripping out a nut, so be it. I'll buy a new nut, but I don't want this thing having any play. Alright, now this one over here. I had to double wrench it to get it off. I'm going to double wrench it to get it back on. Do a little more. Yeah, all right. Let me go ahead and get the chain roller back on, put these rubber caps back on in there, and I'll be right back. Okay. Set the heels. Put it on the stand. Check for any up and down play. None. She is good. Yep, there it is. She'll be good for another 100 more hours. And one more reminder, if you're using a pressure washer, the main killer of all your linkage and swing arm bearings and everything like that is water getting in them. Pressure washers push water through the seal, so be real cautious. Keep some distance if you're using a pressure washer, because that'll take your bearings out in a hurry. Stay tuned, upcoming video. I'm going to be doing another the bearings for the steering stem here. Remember, I replaced them one time in this bike, and I did a video, and I did it without using the tool, because in the past the tools have been known to break the lower bearing, so why even use the tool? Do it the hard way. And that's how I did it on the first video. However, I have a good friend, Miguel, that lent me the Motion Pro tool, swears it will not break the bearing. So I'm going to have a video on that. I'm going to try that tool out. Let's see. Now, this bearing has been off before, so that does help, you know, the virgin bearings on there a little bit tighter, but let's see. That video is coming up soon. I also have a KTM 250SX diagnosis. It won't start, or it would start and go bum bum bum, and it would die. Diagnosis video, and I also have a KTM SX 250 top end video coming up soon. All these videos will be coming up in about a week. And for you guys out there that have the 4-stroke, stay tuned. I have some 4-stroke stuff coming up real soon too. I know I've been focusing a lot lately, probably past month or so, on the 2-strokes, but we're going to be digging back into the 4-stroke stuff real shortly here. And like I mentioned, I will be riding Dade City Motocross on Sunday, the extended track. Hope all you guys get a great weekend of riding wherever you're at. Appreciate you watching this video. If you like this kind of stuff, you know what to do. Click subscribe. I also have some merch down there. You know, it's really just for fun. I'm not making a lot of money off the merch, I promise you that. But it's cool. You know, if you want to represent the channel a little bit, grab yourself a hat. Some of the hats are posted backwards, and I can't help that. But if you click on the link to the hat, you'll see what the other side looks like. We got some Beaver shirts, that kind of stuff. Hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll catch you in the next video in the next few days here. Later.